I'm pretty shy, just in general, at least public speaking wise back then for sure. So like the whole thing just intimidated the crap out of me. I'm just gonna rip the cord on this. I don't care. I'll get a webcam. I started off with like a C920. God, man, I can't. I can't go back and watch my old stuff without just being like, ee. But like, I just needed to do it.
3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Reactorverse podcast brought to you by Passionfruit. I am joined today by someone who I've actually only recently found in the space since I got involved, I think post-pandemic, but I have seen him across multiple channels. He's highly recommended by people that I know personally, so I was eager to have him on for this. I've followed his work. He's really great. Omn1Media. Omni, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, no problem at all, man. Appreciate the invite.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like I said, like I've seen you pop up here and there, different streams, sort of collaborations with people. Our good friend Greg Alba, The Real Rejects, talks about you a lot. He always recommends you for, reaching out and everything. And you attended our last summit because he recommended that you be there for that. So I was happy to have you there, obviously. And yeah, I'm excited to have you here today, man.
Well, again, appreciate the chance to speak and share our experiences. It's been
sure.
As compared to everybody else, like I only started my channel I think 4 or 5 years ago at this point, give or take. And it's just been a interesting journey to say the least.
Yeah. I mean, you'd be surprised, man. Like I've had a few people on here so far, some still coming up that started the channels within the last couple of years, and everyone has a very unique experience, but also on the flip side, a very similar experience, just, trying to navigate the space and learn how to operate in it. So I want to start with, your experience, your time with the channel, and to go back to the beginning, as I always do, just the name for the channel, Omn1Media. How did that come about? How did you kind of coin that name for it?
Well, it's got a little bit of a little history. I grew up in the prime age of video games, one might say. So part of that harkens back to like one of my old gamer tags, especially considering the formatting of it,
right,
with the one.
Yeah.
Which, man, dude, I don't know how much of a mistake that was because I'm sure it confuses a lot of people. I have people that call me Omn1Media or Omni1Media and all this stuff. I was like, guys, it's the I.
Yeah.
But one of the games I loved growing up was Final Fantasy VII. So like one of my first gamer tags was Omni Slash, Cloud's Final, Limit Break. But then I also had like, man, I was a little edgelord, I gotta say, like as a kid.
We all were.
Dude.
Don't worry.
So like I loved Ravens. I loved the aesthetic. I was borderline goth at like when I was in high school. So like eventually I melded that into Omni Raven, and then I carried that, I think, for pretty much the length of the run. And then I was like, okay, I'm starting this channel. I was like, I kind of want to keep that. I've been using it for so long in some way, but it was like, I'm talking about all kinds of stuff. Like it's not one thing. So it was like Omni-Media. I mean, Omni, like in Greek, is all. So I was like, it fits. I don't know how many people are going to even acknowledge that. It probably doesn't look the best, but we're going to roll with it and see what happens.
Yeah. No, it works. Yeah, you're right. It encompasses the scope, I think, of what you were trying to convey, which is all types of media that you're started with. And you started in 2018, and back then you didn't start immediately with reactions. You started with the reviews and for shows and films. And just at that time, were you pretty tapped into the sort of YouTube space of like other movie reviewers and pundits and such as that?
Yeah. For the most part, like a lot of the early people that I watched around that time. And this is honestly like it had been something that I had wanted to dip my toes into, probably maybe even going as far back as like 5, 6 years before I even took the plunge. Because like back in the glory days of like stuff like Channel Awesome, Cinemassacre and like stuff like that, like the elevated movie personalities. Like that's kind of like I was like, gosh, I just the older you get, the more difficult it is to stay in touch with the people in your life. So like I never really had a consistent outlet to be like to keep up with everything that I've been watching or whatever. I didn't have any like outlet to like get any of those opinions or feelings out.
Right.
So that was one of those things that kind of was like, man, I'm pretty shy just in general, at least public speaking wise back then for sure. So like the whole thing just intimidated the crap out of me. So I just found any and every excuse to just put it off. And then, I hit a point where I was doing pretty okay. Finished my college degree. I got a pretty stable job. I got a place that had more space than my previous apartments. So I was just like, I'm just going to rip the cord on this. I don't care. I'll get a webcam. I started off with a C920.
Yeah.
And God, man, I can't I can't go back and watch my old stuff without just being like, ee. But like I just needed to do it. And I guess like one of the things it's really done is like I've gotten way better at just talking. But like that's the thing, you just have to kind of reach that comfort zone. And I was like, I didn't know the logistics of how to like capture everything at the time. So I was like, I'll start simple. I'll just talk about, do some reviews. I don't even remember what my first one was. You might have it on a notepad or something, but like, and then I started like transitioning into trailer reactions because I was like, that seemed, again, kind of not so much like a niche thing to get into, but like it was like something that if I can get excited on camera about something, that would help me maintain that energy throughout in a way. Right. So like that was kind of an experiment, and it just became something that became increasingly fun to do. And then I just kind of dabbled in that, some gaming live streams and stuff like that. It's just a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Your first one was for Kingdom Hearts 3, by the way. just to let you know. At that time, though, like you said, you didn't have the means to capture everything right away, so you started slow. Was there a learning curve for like just the editing, filming, capturing, lighting, all that kind of stuff to get started?
Lighting, because, dude, like starting off, especially with the webcam or whatever, a good lighting setup can turn that into something that looks pretty solid. I didn't know that back then. There's a lot that you can do to make that look good just by having your lights in the right place, because like the gamma settings on those things and the gain and their contrast ratio on those things to just keep them as cheap as that, not great. So you got to help them out as much as you can. You can make them look good. It took me a long time to figure that out. But editing wise, I had a little bit of a hands-on with that in college because I, like an idiot, got an art degree. And one of the classes I dabbled in was I did a filmmaking class, and then I did a film appreciation and stuff like that, just kind of because it fit enough into what I was doing. So I played around with Adobe Premiere and stuff like that a little bit before, and that's my editor of choice currently. It's the one I know, so it's the one I kind of stuck with a little bit. But I've definitely got a better handle on it, at least currently, than I did at the time. Yeah. And, I did like a short film or two that wasn't something I would want to show off. But played around with that a little bit. Most of the stuff I learned about Photoshop, because I had classes for it, I have long since been deleted from the annals of my brain. So I pretty much had to relearn all of that for the thumbnails and all that. So like it's just been tutorials, reading, YouTube videos to at least get a skill level enough to just get something that looks half decent out there. It's not too flashy. I'm still like it's to the point.
Yeah. You mentioned your film appreciation class. I mean, was film something you grew up sort of, loving, involved in, or was it something you sort of discovered as you were older getting into this sort of space?
I've always been taken in with storytelling in general and just art in general. Like my like growing up, I was the draw kid. Like people would ask me to draw them anything, and I would just always be sketching something. And I, then like, and I was just always, I don't know, I was just kind of an awkward kid, man. So like, I had like a small tight knit group of friends. We hung out and stuff, but like, I would just kind of like disappear into films, into animation, TV shows, and all that stuff. The first memory I have, at least at the movie theater, is watching Jurassic Park, the original, in theaters.
Same here. Yeah.
It's probably still to this day my favorite movie.
Yeah.
But like I think that's like a great staple of just like the way you can kind of marry so many different elements and just bring something fantastical to life. And it's just something that's always just fascinated me. And it's just something I always love to talk about and dive into. I've never making something that's a whole other level of intimidation that I don't know that I'm ready for in any kind of capacity, but like I will eat it up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've always been like, whether it be video games, whether it be cartoons, whether it be film, I've been swept up in that kind of stuff. Reading, not so much. Yeah. I'm not the best reader. So once you can visualize something, I will dive into it. I've read some books. I'm not illiterate. But that like the visual medium has always kind of been my thing. I think that kind of spawned out of like me drawing and stuff like that, because that's what I ended up going to school for. But my God, did that make me hate it?
Yeah, right. That's understandable. I had the same memory. Like watching Jurassic Park was the first movie theater going experience I think I had with my family at that time, and that made me fall in love with cinema, the movie theater experience and everything. So eventually with the channel, you use that to transition into the next level, which was reactions, and you went about like I think you have a year and a half to 2 years before you got into that. Were there any specific reservations you had before like that kept you from diving into that?
It was mostly the lack of understanding on what the guidelines were, because I know going into it, there's the wave with, especially with like companies like WB and stuff like that, with the copyright issues around that time, because I kind of missed the big wave of that, where that was a big issue for a lot of these channels that had already kind of been in the game. And I've like heard all the horror stories that came with that, so I was always very, very apprehensive about that. So like I was doing like episode reviews for a lot of things, like the final season of Game of Thrones, Arrow and stuff like that for its final season. And I think it was, if I remember right, I think it was Crisis on Infinite Earths. It was like, dude, this is kind of crazy. So like maybe I should. And that's kind of where I started off, but it also comes down to like, I didn't understand just how long some of these actually take to trim down, especially like when you have these kind of constraints behind it, and to keep the companies off your back a little bit as much as possible. So like I was like I'll start with one. If the channel doesn't get nuked with the one, maybe we'll expand past that. We'll see.
Like you mentioned, it was your first one was Crisis on Infinite Earths. Crossover event for the CW Arrowverse series, and you started on episode 2 of that event. You didn't start on episode 1. Do you recall at that time thinking of you missed one, but like episode 2, you decided to pull the plug, just go for it, rip the cord, as you said?
Yeah, I don't I honestly, I don't remember. When you said that, I was like, I didn't do
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, you did a review for episode 1, yeah, but not the
Okay.
reaction.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think after that, that's when I was like, okay, I've done like trailers, man. And like after the way the first episode kind of, especially the way it ended, that first part, I was like, dang, I missed out kind of on that like shock factor there. And I think that was kind of the motivating factor. It's like, I'll see how this goes.
Yeah.
And good thing that for what, episode part 4 with the Ezra Miller thing, man. That was a big moment at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, very true. Yeah, when you started though, were you concerned at all about having missed that first episode, or like was it something you just like, again, you were just like, I'm looking forward, I just want to do it this way?
Was I worried about it like in a pragmatic sense? Probably not, but in a completionist sense, because I don't like inconsistency. So like if I start something, I don't like leaving it unfinished. So like in a way, it bothered me a little bit that like if somebody is coming in, it's not all reaction, like it's like partial. And that's not the only show that I did that with too. So it is like I have all these things that I say, like I covered this thing from X and X, and like I'm sure there's, at least if somebody coming in right now has that expectation that, oh, reactions back to all the way back to that. And it's not the case for every show. And it bothers me a little bit just because I just like uniformity whenever I'm doing like a series. So like it bothers me. I think in the grand scheme of things, it probably doesn't matter all too much, but it's just that little itch in the back of my head,
Yeah. I asked because I'm the same way. I'm the same where it's like I feel if I had missed the first one, my mind tells me like, oh, like I can't do the rest. Like like I can't just have one missing and then do the rest. But like no, I think it's wise in hindsight. It's helpful to have to like you said, just rip the cord, just go for it, because that leads into like I think the success that you had moving forward, because once you did the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover event, you sort of had like a large landscape of things to work with the Arrowverse. Like all the sort of built-in shows that were going on at the time. And was that intimidating or like difficult at all to manage? Because like again, it's like helpful like at that time to have that much stuff to work with, but also it's a lot to keep track of as well.
Yeah, because I think following that, again, you might know better than me without having it on here, but like because I think like after that, I was like, okay, because it was a huge reset point for some stuff that I had already been watching from the get go, because I had watched Arrow from when season 3 was airing real time. The first 2 seasons I watched on Netflix because I was still hung up on the Smallville thing, and I was like, it's not the Green Arrow I remember. So I was still kind of one of those guys until my buddy, who was a huge, like his like favorite fictional character of all time, Superman, and he loves Smallville, and he like texted me like one day and was like, dude, you have to watch this Arrow show. I know, but trust me. And I was like, all right. And I think I binged the first 2 seasons in like a week.
Yeah.
And, I just kind of been on that ride since then. So I was like, okay, I just did this big event thing. I'm a big DC guy just in general. So like with it marrying all these shows, some of which were disconnected. While they were on CW, they weren't sharing a world. Not all of them were at the time. So that was kind of the point. So there was a huge promise that was to come out of that, of all these shows finally being able to seamlessly interact without the need of like a MacGuffin. Be like, oh, now Supergirl's over here. Why? But like, then the Fire Nation attacked, so to speak, and all those plans got destroyed. But like, it was fun for a little while. It was just a lot to juggle right out of the gate. But I was kind of like motivated by seeing how that changed the storytelling, and it did for a little while until it didn't.
All right. Yeah.
But I know it started with The Flash as far as what my reaction series is going to be, and I think for the other ones, for the majority of that coverage after, I still stuck to the kind of episode review format for a little while.
Right.
And I think for once we hit the final seasons of some of them, I was like, okay, it's the final season. At least I'll start here and cover that, see how that goes. And then from there, I was just like, you know what? I'll make it work. And I started just doing all of them.
Yeah.
It was rough, but ended up, I think that's when I kind of got in contact with Prepper and got help with some of those, which took a little bit off of there. Because by that point, the Patreon was helping out a little bit with mitigating that. For the large majority of it, this was definitely a hobby for sure, where I wasn't. There was no real justification to do what I'm doing, but it was just because I really enjoyed it, and I just really had fun talking about it. Because like saying before, like when it just felt like I finally had somewhere to voice these things that I've just been bottling up, even though I'm not actively like talking directly to somebody across from me. Like it gives me that same kind of just hit to the brain,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's justification enough. Like, you know, I would tell anyone, you know, like time enjoyed is time well spent is what I always say, you know, for this job. Because like I think everyone who starts out as a hobby, they do it because there's a niche to do it and you enjoy yourself. And if it can turn to a cycle to generate more, that's fantastic. But otherwise, you always got to start with that sort of core concept. And when you started doing the reactions for everything, did you notice a sort of any sort of like, you know, different reception in terms of like what people were feeding you into the comments and everything like that, as opposed to like what you're doing before with the reviews and such?
Yeah, I mean, there was a huge kind of, obviously I think they just kind of performed a little bit better just in general. There's a little more attraction to being able to kind of watch along and just kind of see the opinion formulate, because that's the kind of thing that I really like about reactions. It's kind of twofold in a way, depending on where you're coming in with that. But like, you know, you can kind of you're going on a journey with the person. Like when you're going to just like the flat out, this is my opinion on the thing I just watched. You know, you're getting an idea of the experience. But with reactions, you kind of get to see the journey, and you kind of get to go along with it. So there's this kind of like companionship element of it that feeds in, because the viewers, in a way, kind of participating in the conversation as well as it's being formed. So you get to kind of see where I'm coming from or how it actually made me feel before, you know, I break that down at the end. Yeah. Then what drew me into it was starting with like what drew me into the reactor sphere was like diving into seeing like people like you know, shows I love and stuff like that and grew up with or whatever, and see it's the closest you can get to recapturing that first watch without literally giving yourself amnesia is to experience it with someone else, you know? Because like one of my favorite things is if I'm in a new relationship, if I make a new friend, I'm like, dude, you gotta watch this. We gotta watch this. I need to like feel this through you.
Yeah, totally.
You know. So I'm just like, it's man, you show a significant other something you love and they just don't vibe, and you just die inside a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that vicarious, you know, recreation of that feeling, you know, that you had when you first watch it through people. And yeah, that's also why I really love reactions. It's like this like really pure sort of like form of kinship, as my friend like Kyle Katarn says, like, you know, this idea of like not feeling alone, seeing yourself and other people and their reactions, their expressions with the stuff that you love. So after the CW stuff, you started getting to like, you know, Mandalorian, Doctor Who, Clone Wars, lots of sort of genre stuff. You mentioned like how you had that sort of completionist itch about things. Was there any sort of strategy as to how you were going to roll out like the rest of the reactions that you started up, or was it just kind of just like, I enjoy this show, I'm going to start here, just follow this, or was there any sort of like game plan you started out with for that?
Not really. I just like a lot of the shows that I followed them up, the Arrowverse stuff with, was just stuff I was already, again, interested in as a viewer, because I've been obsessed with Star Wars since I was a kid. So like the second we started to get, you know, more Star Wars stuff, not all of it, But like the Disney Plus stuff, like the promise of that, and just kind of the idea of the Mandalorian and this kind of boots on the ground Star Wars show, it was just really attractive, and
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it. So I was like, I'm already kind of doing this with this stuff, so like it's Star Wars. So let me at least check it out and see what it's about, and we'll see what happens with it. And I that and pretty much most other things. I haven't loved everything I've watched. God forbid. I made it through all the Arrowverse stuff, and I didn't always enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I was there for the ride, man.
Yeah.
So the Mandalorian was fun, though. I really liked that because it was just unexpected. I think, like with what
Yeah.
that brought to it, and especially that season too, man. That's still my biggest video. Is that finale?
Oh, right. Yeah. I think it is for a lot of people. I mean, yeah, no one saw it coming at that time. And yeah, because you started again, like the reactions right at the the cusp or the precipice of the new Disney sort of renaissance of live action shows, which was
Mm-hmm.
the Star Wars shows, the Marvel shows coming in the following years. But that also kind of coincided with the pandemic, which is where everything sort of shifted a little bit.
Right.
And I spoke to my, Sonny from Cat and Sonny about it as well. And he said he had a similar experience where, they started, then the pandemic hit, and it didn't really change much for them because they worked together,
Mm-hmm.
and they were isolated enough. But for you, did you have, well, I guess, what was your experience like just getting started rolling with the reactions, but then the pandemic hits and how that sort of shifted like the TV shows and films and the rollout for all that stuff?
Luckily enough for me, I was super fortunate because my day job never shut off,
Mhm.
and for a bulk of it, we had to go remote, so it just kind of ended in a way kind of helped out with the stuff because like at least at the time there was maybe not movies to go to or anything like that, so like it was just the focus on all the new shows that were coming out, so it was a lot of there was still a fair amount to kind of keep me occupied throughout.
Mhm.
And I do think that while everybody was locked at home, viewership was definitely higher across the
Right.
board for most of us.
Yeah.
Since there wasn't too much else to do, a lot of people were on YouTube since there's nothing you can't go to the movies or anything like that. And,
Yeah.
there are some shows here and there that are still dropping or whatever, but it was a combination of things that worked out. But, in the grand scheme of things, it's sort of being not having a motivation to leave the house.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot changed for me. So that was just I got lucky in that way,
All right.
and I am still
And
remote
then-
to this day.
Yeah. Yeah, same, thankfully. And then similarly, you got your reactions up and running, at that time for like the Disney stuff. In regards to the fandom around Star Wars and Marvel, how that's kind of shifted over the years.
Mm-hmm.
What has your experience been? Starting when there was like, such a high on them, and now they're a little bit more under like a very, sort of strict microscope with like how each one is being received. Like, I guess, how has that shift been for you?
It's been a roller coaster. Like, as far as the Marvel stuff, I haven't seen too much, at least on my videos, unless it was She-Hulk. That was like the one time where it was every video. There was just people going at it about
Yeah.
certain things. For the most part, I mean, especially like with like WandaVision kicking off, like there's definitely been like a change, and I think it's part of it is because at least one of my theories at least is that we've just been getting so much of it now, and I think people are just mildly spoiled
Mhm.
with it because they've just been shoving it in our faces. These used to be like event things,
Right.
When Go Unify, it was we didn't have this overabundance of it, and admittedly, some of them, even some of the ones that I've enjoyed, have had some issues. That
Right.
comes with them just trying to keep the conveyor going. So they've kind of shot themselves in the foot, I think, with just the way they've been trying to turn Disney Plus into something. Like, it was cool, like we were getting these things right out of the gate, and then it started to kind of be this thing that kind of started to eat itself a little bit because
Yeah.
of just how hard they went, trying to force feed us with all of it. So I think at this point we've got so much about it. I think a lot of people and myself included to some extent, can be a little more picky about the things now that we're getting. Before it was like, we had like 1, 2, 3 Marvel movies a year. That was it. And then we had 3 movies, 5 shows, and we're just like, can you stop, or can you do better? God, leave me alone. Like, they're still fun to watch, but like there's I don't know, man. I think a lot of it has been the overindulgence in it. And then if Star Wars is a whole different conversation, because there was some just very, with Marvel, I think the question is the quality over time has kind of been put into question. Star Wars itself has been where I've seen way more of that divide, because there's without going into anything, because I don't want to do that here, but like, we all can admit that there was polarizing decisions that were made before all the Disney Plus stuff kicked up. So like, built in at this point, there's a large contingency, and it's not like the Zack Snyder stuff, like where it may or may not be a vocal minority. Size, we don't really know. Star Wars is a global thing.
Right.
So like, there is, no matter how large or small that divide is, it's big regardless, by comparison to maybe a different fandom or whatever. So like, it's the damage that's kind of been done to the brand no matter what. It's not a win, it's a lose-lose scenario no matter what you do at this point. So like, there's always people that are going to be going into the new Star Wars show wanting to hate it because of how they felt about things that have been done before, and then people that are just eating it up without a thought, and even some people that's like, whatever. It's just like people in the middle.
Do you have any specific strategies to kind of navigate that space, like as it is now? Like you say it, so it's really very polarizing. You say one thing, it goes another way. People interpret it this way. Is there anything you do specifically to sort of like keep your sanity?
Yeah, I mute people that are not being respectful. Like, I'm totally fine with people having their opinion, sharing their opinion, but like, once it devolves into like just rabid attacking one another in the comments, I intervene in most of that anytime I get, anytime it actually comes into my radar. But aside from that, my strategy is just in the videos is just to, one, be honest. And at this point, like, there's enough negativity that, if I present a negative, it's going to be respectful and just be like, hey, this is just how I feel, but I liked all this, and this. Like, it's like a thing. It's like all these videos are a pros and cons list. Sometimes you'll have more in one category than the other, but like, it's just how you present them is kind of where I try to ride the line and not feed into just the chaos, unless there's just like pure just ignorance that I can't stomach. Like, that's one thing that like I don't like. There's opinion, and then there's that other stuff, and I don't tolerate the other stuff.
Right. Yeah, totally. And then now that you're a couple years into the channel, you have the luxury of like your Patreon poll to suggest things for you to watch. You just started Agents of Shield because of it, but one of the shows you recently started, which I was really happy to see, was Severance. And I was really excited to see you, because like not a lot of people are watching it. It's a kind of like a niche Apple show.
That's the first Apple show I've even touched too.
Yeah, exactly.
I've never, I did a free trial for it once and then never even watched anything.
Yeah.
So I completely wasted that. So like, it's just like, I'm hearing more and more about some of the stuff they got over there. I'm just like, okay, well, dang, what have I been missing on? Especially with this.
They got some fun stuff.
Surprise.
Yeah. It was one of my favorite shows of last year. Was there or is there still any hesitation to do niche shows like that? Like Apple. Like, again, like I think I have a similar experience. I wasn't really watching a lot of stuff on Apple for a long time. I finally found that show. When it comes to the shows that don't have like sort of built-in large audiences, like, do you have any sort of reservations about those things?
I do, just from like the logistics point of it, because if not people tuning in, whatever, that can feed into the analytics and the algorithm and all that kind of stuff on what YouTube may or may not do with the next one. So like it can be kind of potentially cannibalistic sometimes, but they voted, and I'm gonna, unless I hated it, like if I don't care if they picked it, if I ended up not liking it at all,
Yeah.
and it wasn't getting views, I'm not gonna like sit there and expect people to watch me just like not have any kind of fun talking about this thing. But like, thankfully, like so far, man, between like the movies, because I do like a monthly poll for, you know, what movie I'm gonna watch this month with you guys or whatever, and then I haven't had one stinker from any of that, so I've been pretty fortunate with it. But with with the kind of this gap and everything, because like a lot of my regular shows at this point, you know, up until this point, like we talked about, like the Arrowverse stuff, like the Flash ended, Superman and Lois is getting a truncated final season, like it's pretty much all going away as far as like daytime television, something that's not streaming, all that's kind of gone now. So I feel a little more free in what I pick and choose to react to, at least. So like I was like, okay, I'll take one or two slots. You know, I had the Friday slot or whatever that I made around dark, which is kind of where that fed into. I was like, once I got to the end of that, I was like, okay, well, I don't know where to go from here. So like, I'll let you guys pick. Like, where do we want to go next? And once that other stuff kind of cleared up, I was like, I could probably squeeze in another one. So I took the 1 and 2 from the poll and turned that into Severance and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I was like, well, I'm enjoying that. I'm enjoying it right now. S.H.I.E.L.D. though, that's going to be that's a little bit of a longer haul than the 9 episodes of Severance.
Yeah, it's a big dedication for that one. Are there any other sort of shows, like experimental or otherwise, that you're eyeing at the moment that you think you're interested in, but you don't know, like down the line you might put on a poll or something?
Well, I'll be putting up a poll to replace Severance soon, considering it's getting into the second season at this point. You know, I'm caught up. I'll just watch Severance when it comes out.
Right.
So like, I'm not worried about having it in a specific rotation. So I'll probably be putting just the same poll back up with the same suggestions, because there was 101 shows on the poll.
Oh jeez. Wow.
So like, I was like, hey, I took every one of them, so like whatever, we'll see what happens. And I'll probably fill in that slot and see what happens. But as far as like kind of dipping my toes into something interesting or different, as far as like me being like, I'm eyeing out a show to do next or whatever, is like having just kind of come off, and it's not up yet, but like having come off, I mean, by the time this is public, it will be out. But having finished, you know, the live action One Piece, which was my first anything with that property at all. Like I've watched plenty of anime, but I've never approached that, because like no matter what point, it was just like this beast to enter. And with how much I enjoyed that, I'm too curious to not check it out at this point. So that's probably the next thing that I'm kind of like eyeballing, aside from stuff I know that's coming out in the coming months that I'm definitely going to be watching. Like if it's Mike Flanagan, like Fall of the House of Usher, I don't know how that's going to do, but I'm going to watch it. Because it's always like, I haven't, like, even I know Midnight Club, maybe because of the younger skew of it, didn't catch people like Haunting a Hill House or Bly Manor or Midnight Mass or whatever. It was still really good. They're still very contemplative about a lot of his usual themes. So like, I'm pretty confident in Mike Flanagan, so I'm definitely going to see him adapt good old fashioned Poe story.
Yeah, it's good to have those sort of focal points that you can always rely upon. Mike Flanagan is great. But yeah, it's also great that you have your Patreons or your patrons to give you these suggestions. You have like a constant rotation of people to, guide you where to go. And congrats, recently on passing 50,000 on
Thank
YouTube. I know it's like a big milestone to get to the next one.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned earlier, I've seen you around on different channels, different like streams of stuff, like sort of collaborating with people. And that's just something as, someone who works in the space, sort of advocating and wanting to build that interconnectivity between people. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see familiar faces here or there, and so I always appreciate you when you pop up and things. I guess have those experiences impacted you in a way, like, because you started out as like, enjoying reactions. Now you're in it, you're doing it, but having that, I think, sort of next level, third level of like being a part of the rotation of reactions in the community, in the space. Have you felt about those sort of crossovers and collaborations?
It's just fun just to kind of interact with people that go through the same, sometimes BS as you.
Yeah.
And the same kind of struggles, and whether it be like mental or just the actual like execution or management of these things, it's a lot of fun. It's definitely a different feeling, because I know I've done like a handful of reactions together with Greg and them, and then a couple podcasts here and there with some other reactors or whatever, and then we had the big old trivia thing like 3-4 years ago at this point, something like that.
Yeah.
And it's just fun to kind of go from being kind of on the perimeter, in the periphery, in the outer rim, so to speak, and being allowed into the core worlds to play a little bit. It's, I don't know, it's surreal at some points, but it's just like an extended, because you kind of, for me, like, it's never been like, I've never been like, holy crap, I went from watching this person to like talking to them. It's just kind of like, maybe it's the parasocial nature a little bit of it, that I just kind of like, it just feels like you're just walking in, kind of having a conversation, and you have these things built in that you kind of already kind of have a gauge on how you feel about certain things and stuff like that. It's just been very, and just welcoming, just in general. Everybody's been great. I don't have any reactor drama or beef with anybody. It's always been very respectful, fun, and interactive. Like, everybody's always very willing to help, and I think a lot of that comes from how much of a kind of uphill battle we kind of have with the type of content that we produce. So there's like a camaraderie and kind of kinship that kind of is just built into it, I think. Kyle Katarn like mentioned that for a long time he felt like he was on an island doing his own thing, but he like really loved the reaction space, and so you like to be a part of it, to be more ingrained in it is something he really appreciated. And would you have any suggestions for, say, like smaller or like newer channels that are like getting started, that how they might be able to sort of cross that barrier to like just reach out, interact with people? I don't know if I'm the right person to ask about that, because I've never approached anybody for anything. I was just like, anytime I popped up in anything at all, I was invited, because like I'm always just like, I don't know, for me, I know how busy it is. I don't want to bother anybody. But like, so I don't know if I'm the right person to ask for that. But
I think
if you catch their attention, it might happen.
I think that's still helpful. I think the inverse of that is still helpful. Like your understanding of like what goes into the work. It's very busy. It's like everyone has such heavy schedules all the time. But you have made the time to reach out, and not to reach out, but to reciprocate the responses like the people have wanted from you, and to collaborate. And I just think that's a good testament to the space, like you said, to be very agreeable and to be helpful to one another. And I just think it's a great thing to see.
Yeah, I can't say there's only, unless I really can't make something, like there's only been like 1 or 2 times I've been invited over onto a thing or two and just been like, I can't make it. But it's just like, because I just couldn't make it. So
to slowly wrap things up here, I guess, I just want to ask, what has been the biggest obstacle for you in your time managing the channel?
Managing my time. with the channel.
Yeah.
Sleeping, honestly, like because it's so chaotic. Because I don't have the luxury or convenience of doing it full time or anything like that. So I still have my 9 to 5
Right.
every day of the week, barring weekends, Monday through
Yeah.
Friday. I got a normal
Yeah.
Monday through Friday, 9 to 5.
Yeah.
I'm a little luckier because I don't have to leave the house for it. So as of late, I can kind of, if I'm free enough, I can kind of tinker while I'm working.
Yeah.
So that's been a little bit beneficial. But like prior to that, it's just like, especially without having like the built-in fan base and being like a smaller channel and stuff like that. It's the biggest challenge is like the balancing life with the need to be on top of everything,
Mm-hmm.
because that'll have you waking up at 3 a.m. catching that Disney Plus drop unless they change it up for everything after Ahsoka going forward. That was super helpful. I appreciate that, but there's still the other streamers are still dropping at 3 a.m. for the most part. So like it's just kind of like finding, the biggest thing is, man, finding time to even rest. And the thing is, like, going back to what we talked about before, I wouldn't really go through that if I didn't actually enjoy what I'm doing, because like I like the thrill of catching it. I love the thrill and the fun of being part of the conversation and just kind of like getting that ball rolling. If I didn't get anything out of it at all, it would just be daunting, you know?
Yeah.
Because like there's days I had to like shut down for after it because I was just exhausted.
Yeah. You had to reset.
Sleep is the biggest hurdle I've got, I think, is having any kind of consistent sleep schedule.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been there, trust me. Like even not for reactions, but for editing, working, for other entertainment shows. Like yes, like sleep is such an easy thing to overlook, like when you're trying to stay on top of the ball, as you said. But in addition to that, I would ask, how have you grown in your time with the channel?
I've gotten, as far as like confidence, like I've skyrocketed in that category, I think. And I think a lot of that just comes from just, like I mentioned before, like I was kind of afraid about putting myself in front of a camera and just, can I hold a conversation by myself or anything of the sort, and not just be weird or me feel weird or me stutter, hammer or whatever. Because like I said, like I'm usually the person you engage. And I guess in some ways that is still true based on what I just talked about as far as collaborations and stuff like that. But like, I don't have any problem just kind of just diving right into it at this point. But that was not the case when I started out. And I think it's just something you have to like do and get used to it. And it just kind of will start to come to you from that point onward. And I've honestly carried that off of this because like, while doing all this and stuff, I'm kind of like in the background, like, I've been in like advisory positions at my day job and stuff like that. I've become like a team leader in certain places at my previous job, like it's somehow like cross-pollinated to allow me to do some other things that maybe I wouldn't have been so comfortable doing before. I don't know. It's helped kind of crack my shell, let's say that, because that's something I think, especially in this country, we're very much conditioned to have those very hard exteriors, and that's one of the things is like I never wanted to even like consider bothering anybody with my stuff, and this is just kind of like, I don't know. It's just like a place to vent in a lot of ways. And I've said this too, like in my live streams, and I've said this in a couple of my videos. In a lot of ways, I was like, hey, sometimes talk to you guys is kind of, you guys are pretty much my therapists.
Yeah. That might feed into my final question here, which is beyond any sort of financial or monetary value, what would you say is the most rewarding part of the channel?
Just the people. I think is the, it's not, I think there's like a, not to, I guess, project or assume there, just by putting yourself into the camera, there's like a perception of the attention draw. But for me, like, that's the gateway for the community for us to access one another in a way. My favorite thing about this has been the people that I've talked to, the people that have supported, the people that have, engaged in conversations, just the people that find warmth in, being able to watch their favorite shows through somebody. Maybe they're going through a tough time or whatever. There's just like this companionship that it creates. And like I said, I started the whole thing was because I didn't feel like I had anybody to talk to about the things that I enjoyed. And I've realized I'm not really alone in that way. And that's kind of, the older you get, the harder it is to kind of maintain that, at least in your personal relationships. Friends are going to get married, they're going to have kids. You might get married, you might have kids, or whatever. Time being made to have conversations about fictional stuff doesn't always boil down to being easy or warranted. So like, it just creates this kind of island where you guys can go and hang out and talk about whatever. Cause like, I can record these when I record these, but you can watch them whenever you're able and still get the same thing out of it, So
Right.
that's still my favorite thing that I get out of it. It's just, meeting and talking and connecting with like-minded people about the things that we all enjoy.
Right.
Hopefully enjoy.
Awesome, man. Yeah. Ideally enjoy. Yes. Yeah. Thank you, man, so much. I want to get into our final questionnaire of the show. Just 10 questions down the barrel for you. So question 1, what is your favorite TV show?
The X-Files. I'm actually going to the 30th anniversary convention at the Mall of America tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
So that's fun.
That sounds awesome, actually.
I'm very nervous because I'm going by myself because I could only afford to go alone.
I think, I think I recommended to you on Twitter my buddy Tom Ryman's podcast, Fox Mulder's a Maniac, for Gamefully Unemployed, just a retrospective rewatch of the entire series with the
I listened to a few of those.
Fox Mulder
is
insane.
Very good.
Yeah.
It is really good. Oh my god, I can't tell you how many times those guys cracked me up about the show.
Yeah, it's a fun show on the rewatch. What is your favorite film?
I would probably just go with Jurassic Park. I think that's the safest one. It's definitely the most impactful, and I think it's one of those movies that it just holds up. Plus, I was a dinosaur kid growing up, so win.
Same, yeah. Yeah. What stresses you out?
Better question is, what doesn't stress me?
Fair, yeah, it's fair.
I'm a very stressful person. I get very anxious and just about anything. I think that's what attracts me to this stuff a little bit. It's because it allows me to just turn my brain off for a little bit and get out of my own head for a little while.
Yeah.
One specific thing I can tell you: student loans, kids.
Oh. It's a good one.
Manage your expectations.
Yeah.
Know what you want to do before you start. Don't stretch it out. Get in, get out.
It's good advice. What helps you relax?
Dude, like just media.
Yeah.
Turning on a video game. That can be catchy. Sometimes turning on a video game. Sometimes that just generates way more stress.
Yeah,
I could say just kind of anymore, just like kicking back and just honestly watching other people's reactions to stuff.
Yeah. That's fair.
That's kind of what I do to unwind these days, or listen to a podcast. Fat Man Beyond is one I listen to quite frequently, and they're always pretty chill. So like, that's a good one. Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum, I really enjoy. But like, whether it be a podcast or just YouTube videos, that's usually my go-to to unwind and de-stress.
Okay. I think that answers my next one, which is what pastime outside of film and TV do you enjoy the most?
Video games. YouTube.
Still
Still,
Siblings, yeah.
all that stuff. All the same.
Yeah. What is your guilty pleasure show or film?
Oof. I'd say film. High School Musical.
Yeah.
I was a show choir kid in school, so like when that came out, that was around the sweep of it.
Yeah.
Like it's cheesy, it's corny, but my God, does it kind of like give me a sense of actual nostalgia to like kind of what I've done. So like I don't know.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it.
That's
like
fair. That's fair.
Alvin and the Chipmunks. We'll do that too. I like me some Alvin and the Chipmunks still.
Yeah. A little sidebar. Have you seen the movie Theater Camp yet?
I have not.
You should definitely check that out. That was one of my favorite comedies of the year so far. It's very, very funny. And I went, saw it in theaters, and in front of me there was an entire row of theater kids watching it for like in a big group, and it was very fun to watch with them.
Oh, that's neat. I haven't even heard of that one. To be honest, I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, it's kind of a small indie film. Came out a couple months ago. I think it'll come out on streaming like next week or so. So
Okay.
maybe it might be a good reaction. Might be a
Chances
fun
are
one.
it probably didn't show here.
Yeah,
is the
it was.
thing.
Yeah, that's true. What would your dream profession be besides reacting or your current profession?
Ooh. I don't know. I never really settled on one. I was like all over the place thing growing up. Like I want to do this, that, this, and that. You know, I
Yeah.
wanted to be an animator originally, but my God, do I not want to touch that with a 10-foot pole these days? But I don't know, really. Hell, if I could do this,
Yeah,
I would,
that's
I
fair.
would probably
that's fair
be
too.
content and happy at least, and not wanting to like veto life. But like I don't know. I've thought about trying to make something myself and dabble into it. It's still kind of like what I was doing before what kept me from diving headfirst into this when I really got the itch to initially start. I'm kind of right there with that. I was like, I talk about it enough. Could I make some?
Yeah.
But like maybe that'll be the next little stepping point. We'll find out.
Yeah, it's possible. Lots of people have those aspirations. Maybe one day we just got to get a bunch of the reactors together to make something together.
Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah. What show gave you your favorite reaction experience on the channel?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Like just in general, like which one, got the most out of me or was most
Yeah,
fun
like you
to
remember it
react
fondly
to?
from like the audience, the reception, like your own reaction, your output, so on.
Dang. It would probably come down to Stranger Things, or I mean, I would say even like in an equal sense, even though like the scale and the audience was vastly different, would be Stranger Things because I started it all last year. So like I went straight from season 1 right into season 4.
Yeah.
And that was kind of wild. That was one of those shows and like, and maybe it's not going to be for everybody or anything like that. But for me, I was like, man, is this going to be one of those situations where this is overhyped? And like, I was just like, might as well have had my face in the screen and just like the speculations and all that stuff and not knowing where it was going. And then Dark. I didn't know anything about that show before I started it. I didn't even know the main premise, which was set up at the end of the episode, which I still think you shouldn't know going into it.
Yeah.
But like, I didn't know anything about it. I had a buddy of mine who was like, dude, you like X-Files? You need to watch Dark. And that's all. That's all he said. He would just say that to me every now and then. And I was like, all right, whatever. And then it came about, I think like when 1899 came out. And I was like, it doesn't make any sense. And again, this goes back to my weird OCDs. I was like, well, I know they're not connected, but I should watch Dark first.
Yeah.
I did the same thing with Mike Flanagan when Midnight Mass was just coming out. I was like, yeah, but I haven't watched it where it starts, even though it's not have anything to do with each other. But my God, that was a brilliant show. And it was so much fun. And mostly in how much it hurt my brain.
Yeah. Yeah. It is it's mind-boggling show. But like you're right, it's good to go in completely blind if you can. What film or show would you want to erase from your memory to watch again for the first time on the channel?
Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah.
I've seen it way too many times. I was one of the few people that actually went to the theater to watch it.
Same. I was there.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. Have you ever read the graphic novel,
Yeah,
the source
Yep.
material? Yeah.
I'm rereading
I'm
it
very
right
excited
now
for
in preparation for the animated.
For the anime, yeah, yeah. I'm
Yeah,
excited for that.
fun.
I'm excited because they'll follow the graphic novel a little more closely.
Well, I'm
it seems
excited
like,
about
so.
what they just said too. Is that they said it's going to be fresh for both, and like with
Oh,
it makes me wonder if like with the movie how it changed the ending.
Mhm.
How I'm wondering if this is going to be like, well, we couldn't do some of these things, and maybe he feels differently about certain choices now. So I'm wondering if it's going to have like some retroactive shifts to kind of
yeah.
be what his current headspace is, because I know that was one of the factors with why he changed, I think, the ending in the film. But
Yeah.
I'm excited.
that could be
One,
true.
because
Yeah,
I've been
I'm excited for
screaming
that.
for it to be an anime for forever.
Yeah, it is perfect. And my final question here: what advice would you give to yourself, your past self, when you first started the channel?
Do it. Stop
Yeah.
being a little and do it. Just stop getting hung up. Just rip the Band-Aid off. I think you'd be okay. Yeah, I think that's the whole thing. Like, honestly, like the setup that I had when I started, I had at my disposal long before that. So it was just getting past the fear of it or the uncertainty of it or whatever was kind of putting up that mental block. Is like, I think, and I've told that to a few other people. Is like, what's your I've had people in like my Discord and stuff like that. It was like, I want to kind of dive into this too a little bit. Like, what advice for you have for somebody who's not sure about talking in front of a camera? I was like, you just have to do it. You have to do it until you get used to it.
Yeah.
So it's like it's. I mean, you're not going to know what it feels like until you have engaged with it, and I think that's it's scary, but I can't think of anything else other than around it, because I just got to a point where I just didn't. I just like, if I'm going to do this at all, I just need to sit down, hit record, and then figure it out.
Yeah,
the editing,
great.
all the other stuff will come as you learn how to do it. I think if you can sit down, get comfortable talking with the camera, and just not try to be one thing or the other, like be a character, be anything other than just, it's so cliched. Just sit there and just let what you want to express come out. Just be yourself.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, there's going to be a little bit of a barrier there once you get out there, because there's an uncomfortability. So there's something where you just got to get used to it, stretch your muscles, that figuratively, and I think once you get to a point, you'll just be able to flow right through it.
Perfect advice, not unheard of, but it is always important. Omni, thank you so much for being here, man. I really appreciate your time and coming on, sharing your insight with all this stuff. Where can we find you online with the one, everything?
I'm on pretty much everything with the same handle. Omn1 is the only number in the entire thing. And then media. So Omni-Media, no I, 1. Not true.
Perfect.
There's an I in media, not in Omni. See, this is why I'm like, why did I do this? But yeah, Omn1Media, Omn1 on everything.
Sounds great. You can find me at NerdChronic across all social media as well. If you're listening to this on YouTube, please like, subscribe, share, all the good stuff, comment as well. Who you'd like to see next. If you find this on the newsletter, please subscribe to that as well and share that. We always appreciate the numbers on there, and we will catch you on the next episode.